Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is the moment that you've all been waiting for. I'm going to teach you an exercise for your tongue, yes, your tongue, that literally could be the most powerful thing that you have ever tried for whatever pain issue that you are experiencing. Now, the part of the motivation for putting together this video is because I recently posted several different tongue exercises on Instagram and they went wild, and I am still getting comments and direct messages from people all over the world saying that the tongue exercises have been the most impactful thing that they have ever tried for their stubborn pain issues. In fact, I have heard several stories from people that have tried tons of different things and they've had chronic pain for 10 years or upwards of 20 years. It hasn't responded to anything. They did one set of tongue circles, which is the exercise I'm going to share with you in this video, and their pain completely went away. The tongue is a wild structure, all right, and it has a lot of potential for helping us with a lot of different things, how we move and pain. Now, there are a ton of details that I didn't get to share in my short form content about this exercise, and I'm going to share those things with you in this video so that you can ensure that you're doing the exercise correctly, and I'm going to teach you some things that will help you get the most out of it. Watch the video all the way to the end because I will summarize how you can use this in your life, and I will also talk about some of the interesting neuroanatomy that supports why exercising your tongue could help you in the first place. Are you ready? Here we go. So before we begin the exercise, you need some kind of assessment so that you can understand how your body is responding to the exercise. Just like everything that I teach in neuroanatomy, we make our decisions based on history, assessment, theory, and neuroanatomy, and those things help inform us how we might use a given tool to help somebody. Now, right now, we don't have history, we don't have assessment, right? We just have theory and neuroanatomy, and so it is even more important that you assess your body before and after the exercise to see what kind of response you're getting. So, this video is going to be mainly based around using this exercise for pain, even though there are tons of other reasons that we might use it. But you know, experientially, over the years, the tongue circles in particular has been a very powerful exercise for helping people to resolve neck tension in pain, low back tension in pain, and even hip tension in pain. So you need some kind of an assessment to tell you how those body areas are moving and feeling. So if you're doing this for neck tension, then you literally want to do some range of motion tests and take a qualitative assessment. How does it feel? How far are you going? Do you have any discomfort when you do it? And you would do the same thing for your lower back, maybe by doing some kind of rotational exercise or assessment, bending over, you know, touching your toes. Maybe you feel some back tension when you walk. Walking could become your assessment. For the hips, same idea. You could just be checking some hip flexion. How high are you going? What does it feel like? Do you have any pain? Those baseline assessments are really important. And what you're going to do is literally get your baseline. Try those movements out, see how you're moving, see how you're feeling, remember how far you're going and what it feels like, and then you're going to perform the exercise, tongue circles, and then it is super critical that you immediately reassess those same things to see if any change has happened. This is the idea of what I often teach as finding a high payoff exercise or discovering a possible threatening exercise. If the drill is high payoff for you, it's going to give you a great result. If it's threatening for you, it may actually regress you. I'll talk a little bit about those things and why it might even regress a person towards the end of this video. But right now, get your baseline assessment. All right, let's do some tongue circles. Now, this is going to seem too silly to even take seriously. Here's the exercise. You see what I'm doing? Literally, I am making circles with my tongue, and I'm kind of pushing my tongue against the resistance that's created by my own lips. Now, there are several different nuances to this that matter. Okay, and I want to make sure that we go over those things so that you can ensure you're doing the exercise well and with high quality. So let's first talk about position, because a lot of people will do this standing up, and I actually would prefer to do it standing up. So from a neutral stance, right, is your working position. And it's really critical that you have good alignment, kind of set your position first. And so the way you would do that is by just lengthening up through the crown of your head. Now, it's not a forced lengthening action. It's literally just kind of gently lifting the crown of your head. And what you'll notice is your chin will come down a little bit and level out. Okay, so you're lengthening from the base of your cervical spine, your neck. And you don't want to feel like you're forcing things to put energy into that. You don't want it to be a max effort. It's just this little itty bitty lengthening maneuver. And when you do that, you will likely feel your weight kind of shift back a little bit, so that maybe now there's a little bit more weight on your heels rather than on your toes. That's key. Now, one of the things that some people run into, one of the difficulties with this exercise, is that their tongue mechanics have become somewhat merged with their neck mechanics. And so when they go to isolate their tongue, they really can't do that. And they push their tongue forward to draw the circles, and they don't realize it, but they're also pushing their head and neck forward with an anterior glide. And then before you know it, they're building unwanted tension at the base of their skull. And those people will say, hey, I did the exercise, but I feel like I have more tension in my neck. Well, you probably do if you're merging your tongue mechanics with your neck mechanics. So that's really important to know. And in a case where a person really can't differentiate those things, I would actually have somebody perform the exercise in a seated position, or possibly even laying down on the floor, making sure that they have adequate support under their head and neck so that they're comfortable and they can kind of offload some of the unwanted tension that they might have in their body. So just know those things, because your starting position is really key here. So you've lengthened up now. You're in a good long spine position, and your chin is nice and level. The idea here is to take your tongue, you're going to close your own lips, and you're going to keep them firmly closed. That's going to produce a little bit of resistance for your tongue to work against. And you'll notice that your tongue has to push outward in order to reach your lips, and then you start drawing the circle. So let's do a few reps. So I lengthen up, I'm in good position. And I simply just draw that circle, okay? Now, the other complaint that I sometimes get when people are doing this is that they're building jaw tension. Well, guess what? Your tongue mechanics can become merged with your jaw mechanics. These are all like motor control issues. And so if you're somebody with a history of jaw issues, TMJ stuff, pain because of different issues with your jaw, it's going to be hypercritical that you keep reminding yourself to keep your jaw relaxed. When your tongue mechanics become merged with your jaw mechanics, similar to what I described with the neck, you might push your tongue out and start these circles and you don't know it, but you are also gliding your jaw forward or backward, or maybe to one side or the other side, and you're creating a lot of tension in your jaw muscles as you're trying to coordinate this movement. So you have to keep reminding yourself and kind of do a little body scan and say to yourself, all right, lengthen up, relax the jaw, relax the neck, now do the circles. And if you feel that tension starting to build, you either stop your set or you just kind of shake it off. Remind yourself to kind of dismantle that tension. Over time, as you get more competent with the motor control of the tongue, you will notice that all the neighboring muscles don't really need to jump in to help with any of the tongue movements. I know it seems weird, but your tongue is a very reflexive structure. It's likely because it's so involved in speech and eating and swallowing. And those are very reflexive things that we actually have pattern generators for, that basically allow us to do those things for a long period of time with a lot of repetition and rhythm, and we don't need to give it any voluntary thought, right? You're not really thinking about what you're doing with your tongue while you're eating or while you're talking. It's just kind of happening. So when you have an area of the body like that, it can get involved in a lot of compensatory things, if you want to think about it like that, particularly the neck and the jaw. So you're in good position. We want to check that box. Okay, you don't have unwanted neck tension, you don't have unwanted jaw tension, and now you just simply draw your tongue circles. Now, a couple other things here. You will be surprised, at least some of you will be surprised at how challenging it can be to actually perform the motor control. Like I said, the tongue is very reflexive, it's been doing its thing the way it wants to do it for a long time, and now that you're giving good focus and attention to performing a specific shape, like a circle, you might be like, whoa, this is hard to coordinate. And soon after that, you're gonna go, whoa, I can't believe how fatigued my deep neck flexors and tongue muscles are. And they will literally fatigue out very quickly. Having a weak tongue with poor motor control is a thing. So, as you're performing your set, I want you to move slowly. So watch my speed here. Moving pretty slow, okay? A lot of times people just go, and that's when you start seeing the jaw doing all sorts of things and building neck tension. So move pretty slow with intent and really focus on what you're doing. You can, if you want, make the exercise a little bit more novel, meaning make the coordination challenge a little bit more difficult. The way you would do that is, imagine my finger here is my tongue. I'm gonna start out with really small circles, so a really small diameter, basically right on my lips. And then each additional circle that I make, I get a little wider and a little wider and a little wider until finally I'm reaching as far as I can, okay, to make my widest circle. And then little by little, with each additional circle, you get smaller and smaller and smaller until you're back so that your tongue is sitting right behind your lips. That's just a way to make the coordination more challenging and to give you more of a target, right? More of a specific shape to create that will keep you engaged as you actually perform the exercise. All right, now, the very first question that always comes up is, how many tongue circles do I perform? So typically, one set would be 5 repetitions in each direction, or maybe 10 repetitions in each direction. That doesn't sound like much, but here's the thing, and you need to know this. This is not an exercise that you would go and do 10 sets of. If you go and do 10 sets of tongue circles, you're gonna be cursing me out the next day because your deep neck flexors and tongue muscles are going to be incredibly sore. And believe me, you do not want a sore tongue. It is no fun. So you have to gradually build up and work on the motor control and the stamina of your tongue. So start with few repetitions, 5 in each direction. And remember back to the beginning of this video when we talked about how critical assessing your response to the drill is, you need to make sure that after you perform one set that you retest. If you were testing your neck movements, go back and immediately do those. If you were testing low back movements, test them out. If you were testing hip flexion, test it out and see, is there any change that has occurred? Am I moving further into a range of motion? Does it feel more efficient? Do I feel less tension? Do I feel less pain? If you can check the box on any of those things, and some people will check the box on all of those things, this is a high payoff exercise for you, and that's exciting. So, next question that comes up is, should I do both directions? And the answer is yes. Now, here's what you need to know. Oddly enough, and there are neurologic reasons for this, tongue circles to the right could produce drastically different results for your body than tongue circles to the left. Okay, so you have to test each direction if you have a very specific goal, like decreasing pain, because you might find that one direction is high payoff for you, where the other one is like, not much change. And therefore, you would use the direction that is giving you the best result. So after somebody has assessed their body's response to the exercise and they discover that it's quite high payoff for them, they're moving better, their pain is less, the next question that comes is, how many times a day do I do this? And should I expect doing one set of tongue circles to fix all my problems because I'm shocked that my pain is gone? So let me touch on some of that. We talked a little bit about frequency, sets, reps. Again, start with few repetitions and build up from there. If you're using it for pain management, you might space out your sets throughout a day as you build up, and that can be quite useful. But the real power of this is when you take the exercise and combine it with other things that you're doing based on your needs. If you're working on pain issues, you're likely practicing other exercises. In our courses, we talk about all of the interesting categories and places we can work that are related to the tongue, and we stack the tongue work with lots of different things like breathing work, working with the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, essentially any midline structure, and also doing some joint mobilizations and postural type work, because it all kind of goes together quite well. And what you're essentially doing is you're using a high payoff drill to create a window where you are now moving with less pain and moving more efficiently. And then it's your job to go and take advantage of that new range of motion and that pain-free movement, which means it can really help you get more out of your practice. So simply put, you would just take the exercise and mix it right into what you're already doing. And if you do that, I think you're going to get some really elevated results. All right, let's talk a little bit about some neuroanatomy, especially if you're a health and movement professional. You probably are dying to know this, and if you're going to try this with a client and they get a wild result from it, they're going to be like, can you tell me why this worked? And I want to share with you kind of two different answers, because when I'm working with a client and I already know that that person is not like super interested in the nerdy stuff, they're just there because, you know, they're either a general fitness type of client and we use some of this stuff to help them overcome pain and movement, but they're not looking to understand, you know, all the details. I will usually tell people that the tongue is an incredibly rich sensory organ. And what that means is that it has a lot of proprioception. And that should make sense to people when you explain that because the tongue is a priority organ for survival. If you think about speech, swallowing, breathing, right? Those are all very important things that keep us alive. And that's likely why it is such a sensory-rich organ. So when you move areas of the body that have high levels of proprioception, there's a lot of potential for creating change very globally through the body. So that's typically how that's the answer I give to, you know, people who aren't super interested in the neuro. Now, this is a really fascinating topic and something you can go and read on and look things up, because there's a lot of neuroanatomy that connects to the tongue. In fact, the reason why it is such a rich proprioceptive area, it's a powerhouse, is because it has a lot of different cranial nerves that supply it. So we've got cranial nerves 5, 7, 9, 10, and 12 that all are involved in the function of the tongue. Some of those are sensory only nerves, some of them are motor, right? So that's both sensory and motor functions. A few of those nerves are the ones that we really zoom in on for the motor function, and they happen to originate in a part of the brainstem, the lower part of the brainstem called the medulla. One of them is actually getting really famous, cranial nerve number 10, called the vagus nerve. And the medulla is a cool structure for a lot of different reasons, but one of the things about the medulla that may be evidence for why tongue exercises helps so often with flexor-based complaints is that the brainstem is largely involved in balancing muscle tone. And each area, each division of the brainstem has a little bit more dominance in terms of balancing either extensor or flexor tone. And the medulla typically is thought of as a structure that has a lot to do with calibrating flexor tone. So that may be why tongue exercises can be so powerful for flexor complaints, whether it's your neck, your trunk, or maybe something like hip flexion. You know, and from there, if you keep looking at the neuroanatomy, there are several descending pathways that become interesting too, that originate in that medullary area that help us with reflexive control of our limbs. So this is why neuro is so cool, is because when you understand, you know, where these pathways are, and you look at these structures and you learn a little bit about their nuclei and where these nerves originate and where they go, all of a sudden you have essentially an infinite amount of tools that you can select when you need them based on the goal that you have. All right, that's what I had planned for you today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you've been excited about tongue circles because you saw it on Instagram, hopefully this video will now serve you even better so that you can understand some of the details that go into the exercise, how to perform it, some of the common mistakes, etc. And as you're doing this and integrating it into your life, I'd love to know how you're doing with it. Love hearing about the success stories, and certainly if you have any questions, ask me those questions in the comments because I'd love to help you out. If you want to learn more about applied neuro, make sure to follow my podcast, the Cruise Elite Podcast. You can also watch my free neuro masterclass that is still available, and that is a wonderful way to get started in applied neurology, really for anybody, but also if you're a health and movement professional and you're really getting excited about this information and the possibility of integrating it into your practice, that is definitely where you want to start. So that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for the support on the channel thus far, and I'll see you in the next video.